who is Manoshi Chitra Neogy? The first word that comes to my mind is warrior, and I feel like she is comes from a very prismed um, background, layered. My father was an ambassador to East Africa from India, and so we, the three of us, two brothers and me, were born in East Africa, and then I went to India at a very young age, and then on to London, et cetera, et cetera. So having the exposure of so many different beautiful cultures. I mean, I spoke English, Bengali, Swahili all at the same time. So it kind of gave me this very wide spectrum of diversity. It's a big word today, I know, but I call it different colors and, beautiful shades of cultures and awareness without knowing that there was any kind of distinction. So I come from that breadth of wideness. And then the next answer to your question would be, since I was 5 years old, my parents or anyone asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? My only answer ever was, I want to express myself. And I would say that that word and that song and that myth or that quest is literally what I live and lived for all my life. So who is she? She is that, an expression of, the artistic, the creative core, the gaze of the artist, the gaze of the divine feminine, the gaze of the feminine mystique. Yeah, and then coming from a very strong culture and then coming into the West, but not losing the elements or the power or the essentials of the culture that I come from. I'll answer the question directly, then I'll go back a little bit to the recording of that CD and everything else. I think live in love is what we all need to be doing in today's culture of distraction and going away from the source, and everything is a distraction, technology and social media and all the, the horrors in Europe, and we all are aware of all of that. I mean, shootings, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like we, the human race, have really wandered away from that center and the knowledge and the beingness of the present and being aware of what the essentials, what looking at the river and understanding nature. And so I feel like a live in love is really a dedication to the goddess, uh, the human cry, the divine feminine, the essentials of life. And so when my friend, partner, Scott Ensley, who suddenly said, he loves that piece, let's make a film of If in Love. And I was like, how do I do this? Meaning I had a beautiful crew since, as you know, you were my student, and I have some beautiful students who graduated years back, but who always said, we just want to work with you. And I found them, and the cinematographer, Michael, and just amazing. And we sat together, and then it was my winged mind that had to find the expression of does one visualize this? And so it was not about, I thought of my younger moments, or before I had completely molded into this warrior self. And as I was talking to Michael, who's a cinematographer, and also we were very close, and he talked about, he said, Chitra, this is not about, oh, I'm younger here, I'm older here. It's nothing to do with that, but it's this walk of being sculpted. and formed and chiseled. So I went back to, I had a beautiful friend photographer who was obsessed to photograph me, and I found them and we printed them, and then I just saw this arc of taking these visuals of then and then kind of crumpling them in a way and giving a sense of the struggle, etc. And then coming to the space, which is now I live in love. So I live in love, meaning I invite everyone to live in love. So that's really what it is and how it found expression. And just quickly going back to the CD, Wood Orchid, I was in New Mexico for a year. I just separated from my ex-husband and I just needed that space. And while I was there, I wrote these poems, I call it word art. And then I met a musician from Prague, and so we performed, spoke, chanted, and then he mentioned that he knew someone in Prague who was an amazing, had a studio. So that's how the CD was born, and then didn't do much with it because I didn't want to just throw it out there and just sell it. Kind of stayed, and people would say, "My God, what did you do?" And then here it is, and now it's like it's having its rebirth or being born. And I have a company in Nashville who found it, and they're going to distribute it. So it's literally like, there's one line in Live in Love which says, I am the story lost and found. And I feel that lostness is now being found. And this is the found moment. So what should people come? What mindset? Open like the lotus flower to receive.
Beautiful. Am I right to assume that there will be a few copies of Wood Orchid at the event?
Yeah, we decided to do that. And I asked you if, who would they have CD players? And you said, I'm sure they will. So
I love the part about coming as open as a lotus flower, which is a symbol and theme that we can find in mostly, probably all of your work.
it's kind of the sacred flower in India. The reason being, the lotus plant, like all lilies, they grow, like especially the lotus, in muddy kind of areas, marshy. So there could be, even if you fling like a pound of dirt on the lotus flower, the dirt just washes out, so it never sticks on the flower. Maybe there's something on the leaves, I don't know, but as far as I'm concerned, symbolically, we just spoke about that. Nothing, it's untainted. And in life, we go through so much, and it is so easy for us to get tainted and then just be broken down and become the victim. But for me, that's what the lotus stands for. It's never a victim. And no matter what happens and wherever you are, nothing stays on you. Everything is, flowing, releasing, letting go, as we said. It's a big question. I'll try to not speak, well, I'll just speak. I would say life. And, a lot of it's one of the required reading books in one of my courses, as you know, the History and Critic course. I only did it because students who had read it said, you have to, you have to. And I'm like, well, I wrote the book, but it's really a journey of transformation. It's a woman's journey, so it's very much a feminine. It's not feminist in any way. It's a woman. So the male aspect is very much part of a true woman. I mean, it's not about separating yourself. I would say life, and I think I was journaling moments all through, and then suddenly it started taking shape. And when my ex-husband and I separated, it seems like a lot of good things happened after we separated. It kind of took shape. Not that I'm not in any way demeaning him. So to answer your question, life, and people ask me, is it autobiographical? It's not autobiographical at all, like I was born here and all that, but it's autobiographical only in one sense, that it's a capturing and remembering and honoring the experiences of what I experience, and just being very open about that. Yeah, an artistic expression of the walk. Why warrior? I left everything that was secure. As I told you, I come from a very, old aristocratic, old money family, which I never experienced because I left at a very young age. So I kind of was on my own and had to walk through pretty much hell. But I never, even when there were moments where I almost couldn't rise, uh, I did, or it helped me do the universe, the ethereal ambiance, art. I so many different words. So it's all of that. It's really the life of that textured being happens to be a woman, could be anyone. And the words, blood words, actually the first title I had was Sand Shades, which was also quite beautiful, but I think not strong enough. And I live near the river, as you know, in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and sitting near the river, my main source of inspiration, she is. And suddenly these two words flew out from the river, and I'm like, okay, that's what it's going to be. I guess it is a craft, but I don't even know if it is a craft for me. It's almost like whenever I talk about the child's gaze in transformative, and the child's gaze is the core, the artistic core, the untainted, the lotus flower. And I think that I was talking about that, and a student said, how do you maintain the child's gaze? I'm like, oh, so then my answer was, it maintains me. So I think that I was writing poetry since I was 5 years old, and my father was the one. I loved both my parents, and my father was the one who really understood the creative fire in me and did everything he could to protect and support. So I'm not sure how that was developed. All I know is that it came from many places, and like people ask me that question, and maybe I should have a more uh academic answer. I don't know if that's the word. I really don't. I feel like the way I think and live, for me, the ethereal world, the universe, those are not empty words for me. They're really realities, and I walk in them. Like there's nothing that goes, in my loft. And everything is surrounded by trees. Nothing is lost. I walk, and I feel like every motion, every moment, every expression, there's a little flower blooming in one of the plants, is some kind of a reminder of life and the beauty of that. So I have this very surreal mind frame, and that I don't know where that comes from, but it's there. I have to become surreal, but I'm sure like Dali and these artists. So I guess it was given to me as my way of expressing my words, and yeah, maybe now it gets even stronger because I have a stronger sense of who I am, and I'm not arrogant, but much more confident in, my expression. So it gets that confidence probably really also gets felt.
The phrase divine instrument comes to mind for me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Faisal, because sometimes just the other day a student said the Bloodwoods is not a book, it's life. And I was like, she's like 19 or 20. I was like, wow. Um, and I often say, I didn't write this book, it was written through me. That's another thing I should say, that I really, when I was writing Bloodwords, it took 2 years to write, and then the editing and all that. Um, I would sit for hours, but I only sat when I knew that there was an opening where I felt that my muse was coming through me. It was like that, and I was like, was flowing through me, and I was just writing the words down. I think that when that instrument is not clear or blocked by whatever, then the muse waits. And you, to be an instrument of the divine, you have to be, the lamp has to be clean for it to shine, to be lit. Beautiful question. I remember when pandemic 2020, and that's when you were, I think we were finishing the fall 2019. We went online, and I remember coming out of the subway here. I came out of the subway, and there were two thoughts. One, and this before I knew that everything was going to go, was going to be online and the lockdown. My one thought was, when is this going to end? The emptiness of the human condition, people are just running around, and all they do is, no one looks, it's only the phone, and now it's a damn Apple Watch, it's like stand, sit, swim, go this. I mean, like, hello. I was like, I had such a feeling of a burden, I felt, when is this going to end? One, and two, I'm never going underground again, and I haven't, and I will not. So I don't know what that's related to. It doesn't matter. But and then the pandemic happened, and first I had remote classes for the 2 years, 2021. First, I was really like blocked about the ritual. I mean, the virtual stuff. And then I said to myself, this is the only way. This is the only tool I have to communicate, and I will bring magic here, and I will make it real. And I did do that, and I think a lot of students said we didn't even realize that we were online, because I think I could achieve that and break that wall. The pandemic to me was the great, great, great. I mean, I'm not saying that it wasn't tragic and there's so many deaths and so many losses, but I feel it was a huge wake up call for humanity. It was not just here, it was global. And if it was so powerful in my feeling that the universe was like, if since you're not listening to me, I'm going to just, show it to you. And this is my expression of wake up. And I feel sorry when I look around and see a lot of people are not, and they talk about the new normal or the normal. What is the normal? I don't want to be normal ever. So it made, just for me personally, I really went in. It was amazing. I never saw it as a negative thing, even though the negative aspects of loss and, business closing, this, that. But I felt that all of that was needed. Like around here, it became very gentrified, and suddenly all these people just came and grabbed. And as soon as the pandemic happened, they all left, and I hope they never come back. So it was a huge learning, a huge, and even in the classes, in the faculty meetings, there would be like, how are they going to do? Okay, so they're going to make films with the iPhones, because NYU wasn't letting students get any equipment during the pandemic years. So I just shifted that too. And you were in the class, and we made that beautiful film, Surreal Silence. I'm like, hey, this is your time to go in, really, really go in. So it was extremely resourceful for those who understood the value of it. And I feel sad when I see that a lot have forgotten it so quickly, which sort of, was going to happen. But to me, it was one of the most important things that could have happened, to wake people up. We can't go on like this. We just cannot. It is not right. It's a stagnation of the soul. Um, everything is distraction. And so it's almost like the social media. There's nothing sacred, secret, nothing. Everything is open, wide open out there. So uh, something has to change. That's what I feel about it. The first word that comes to me is growth. Um, I think like Andrei Tarkovsky, the brilliant Russian filmmaker whose last film was called The Sacrifice, is called The Sacrifice. The film ends, as you've seen it, with the protagonist who has this huge situation. I want to go through the whole thing, where there's a possibility of losing his family and everything, and he suddenly becomes someone who believes, after in the beginning saying he does not, and he kind of falls on the floor and has this beautiful prayer, and he talks to the divine and source and says, if you give back the ecology of what was, like something like the pandemic, I will give up everything. And he does. So that's his sacrifice. But I think that we different people we burn our house in different ways, and sometimes you're given the sacrifice. I've met so many students who have lost their parents at a very young age, or have gone through huge things that they didn't go to find the sacrifice, but they were given these challenges. A student right now in my class has some very strong physical, issues. He's going to make a film about that, and I'm encouraging him. But he's already beginning to kind of find his, more than acceptance. There was this anger and fear, and that's leaving him as we work together. So I think every human being must experience sacrifice, and it is something that shakes you. I've gone through a lot, not thinking. I don't even look back and think, but I had two accidents which should not have been, and I could have died in both, and I didn't, and many, many, many things that just doing taking in a personal way uh, were huge sacrifices. The biggest sacrifices, I left everything, protections, shelter, security, and walked through my life. In a way, it was a sacrifice because I had nothing physically to say, okay, you know, I never had a safety net ever, and I still don't. But I think that's what chisels you, and it becomes your biggest learning, uh, biggest growth, biggest learning. If you don't become the victim, you become the victor, and you yourself, Faisal, have gone through a lot in your life, and you know that. And to take, challenges, whether it's sickness or physical things or whatever, like as learning challenges. And when people students they call it sickness, or and I say change that word. It's an obstacle, it's a challenge. And I think that everyone has to have something to understand the texture of what life is. You can't just not go through anything and understand how the person who's in front of you can hardly walk, and you stop to make sure that that person's crossing the street safely. How many people do that? But when you've gone through things that made you understand the value of life, of everything, material success, everything, then you know you truly know what that means. The value. When you don't have, gone through moments when you don't have, you know what it is. When you see someone who doesn't have, you really know what that means.
Your book, Blood Words, really touches on that, I think, in terms of sacrifice, leaving everything you've known and looking for something that is calling for you. And I think that if anyone knows what sacrifice means, it's you. And you live with such grace, and the rewards, what is it called when you come back, when the hero's journey?
Yeah, the return with the elixir. You walk through all these trials, and you have enemies and allies, and then you find the grail, and you have the chalices filled with gold, uh gold for making blood words, and then you come back with that wealth of everything, and then you can share that wealth. Like, I feel, thank you for saying that about blood words, it means a lot. And I think that I've come back, and so when I stand in front of students, and like the student who said, I've never had anyone, a mentor who I can give them that. And I told him that I can only do this because I know what you've gone through. I could never do it, would have done that. I could not have stood, you've been in my class in front of 30 students or whatever, and said what I say. It really is that walk, that bloody walk, you know.
The elixir that you share with students so readily, so with such like it's a very vulnerable place to be, but you do it because you really care and you want your students to create, to tap into their soul power and to bring back their own elixirs as well.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what you just said is exactly what I say. Absolutely. And they can only do that if they know, if they thought, oh, she's just a bullshit artist, you know, professor standing there and, you know, that they would know immediately. If you were there, you know, there's a difference. And it's not about teaching. People say, how do you like teaching? And my question is, I don't know if I teach. You know, I emit, I exude, there's a word for it. You know, I give that passion. I transmit. I don't know, whatever the words are. So teaching how to make a film, you can go to Google and learn that. It's not that. But how do you make a film with, you know, with the vision that, you know, which is usually not tapped, because in most other film classes, it's okay, you have a story, you have, you know, the plot, beginning, middle, end, what's the plot structure, where's the conflict area, this, that, good, go shoot. I'm like, what's the source? Why are you making this film? And then something happens in them, you know, they start self-excavating and it becomes a film that breathes. It doesn't just not just, okay, it's just a film that's fun to do. Uh, Fun to do. I mean, this is a huge medium. You know? It's fun, only fun when it's inside fun, you know, when you found your source, not just, you know, you can make a, a simple film and I don't know. I don't think making a film is fun. It is beautiful and powerful, but I think you know exactly what I mean. Pierce like a sword, change, shift, transform, make you think, shifts you like, you know, I call it not entertainment, but entertainment. And I think film is really like a beautiful sword of awakening. You know, and you see a film because film is such a bigger surrounded by sound, vision, you know, it's such a huge impact. And every part of you is moved and shaken. And there's a word called duende, by Garcia Lorca, I think is Chilean writer, poet. He's coined that word, and duende is that inner uh, point that you don't really see, but it's there. Like he talks about, like if you're watching some, let's say a flamenco, 5 flamenco dancers, and one is like you can almost feel the wings coming out of her body or his body. That's duende. That's what cinema should do. I would call that, I'll change the word favorite to piercing. You know them, I know. Andrei Tarkovsky, Ingmar Bergman, Truffaut, Bresson, Kurosawa, Satyajit Ray, uh, Abbas Kiarostami, uh, who is the Japanese, Chinese, Wong Kar-wai, um, Jim Jarmusch, American, brilliant, Werner Herzog, in beginning films, um, Truffaut, did I say Truffaut? Pasolini. And recently, I'm not sure, there are a few. I think Linklater did some interesting things. Why? Because I think they are, like I said, you know, they use the camera, they use film to really, It's not about when I as you know, the experimental, and I prefer experiential because it's a larger term. So it's it's going beyond boundaries. It's going beyond the formulaic constraints. They don't go with this typical Hollywood structure, and Hollywood is more like a factory like Bollywood. But they have they take risks. They have the courage to go beyond, and that's why, and I tell students, where's the arc? Where's your arc? I mean, every story has an arc, whether you know it or not. Every movement has an arc. You move from one place to another, there's something happening, it's an arc. So, but these filmmakers, they're like Tarkovsky says it beautifully. He said they're filmmakers who just take from around them, and they're filmmakers who create their own worlds. And these are the poet filmmakers. To me, that's what they do. I think bringing in the melody of the verse, I think Journey is a cine poem, even though it has documentary elements in it. Live in Love is a cine poem. But Blood Words will be one in a bigger way. It's a narrative, not a narrative, it's a story. It's a huge story, as you know, you're reading it right now. But the expressions within this kind of quote unquote narrative structure are these fluid sparks of duende, which kind of breathe into the soul of the verse melody. And so this film becomes a poetic expression. It has that element of poetry. So, and for me, that poetic element makes it, it's almost like bringing in this breath of fluidity and sparks.
It makes me think of that word that you used in your book. I'm trying to find it. It starts with the letter N.
Numinous.
Yes.
Numinous word was created by Carl Jung, the psychologist. And that's a perfect word, Faisal. So numinousness is the lightness of a human being, the kind of less light, glowing, and there you go. You made me think of something else now. Cine poem is a luminosity. And people, have luminosity or not. Meeting you again soon in person. I've heard, I've been to Woodstock. Woodstock is my love, that area. And after New York City, I'm almost sure I must have gone to Hudson. But I'm not 100% sure. But I just feel the energy of it, even if I haven't. And one of the colors, I'm really looking forward to kind of walk into the fall beauty. You've told me that it's a very artistic community. I'm very excited about meeting them and the energy of who they are, and sharing, my work. I feel that's a very beautiful timing. So really, really excited to come there and be able to breathe my art and my love again. I mean, not that I don't, but in an ambience where that's not a wasteland.
Thank you so deeply, Chitra, for sitting with me today and having this wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we can't wait to have you here at TSL.
You're welcome. Thank you, Faisal.